The playoffs are officially here. You did it. You drafted a great team. You played the waiver wire well, and you are 3 weeks from fantasy glory. Take a moment to appreciate where you're at. Give yourself some kudos. It's hard to make the playoffs. But, in the words of Kobe Bryant, job's not finished yet. And you may have a lot of work to do this week. And you're going to lean on the wire because the injuries, Aidan and Keegan, are brutal. CJ Stroud concussion, Nico Collins calf, Justin Herbert index finger on his throwing hand, Josh Jacob knee injury, Alexander Madison ankle injury, Jerome Ford wrist injury, Justin Jefferson chest injury, Dalton Kincaid make it stop. Don't worry though. We've got you covered because on today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we have our Week 15 waiver wire targets. I am your host, Shaun Moran. I am your host, Shaun Moran. The other two fine gentlemen are Keegan Thompson, the mustache one, and Aidan Hollard, the one with the Pliny Helder hat on. Boys, ready to hop in? Ready to do this?
Yeah, let's save some seasons.
I love that. Yeah, I know personally, Aidan has been hit hard by the wide receiver injury bug, so he's probably going to be leaning on the wires tough this week.
It's a disaster. There's no way around it. Yeah, I'm going to be waiver wiring up.
All right, well, let's start with running back this week. Aidan, you have the top 3 running backs on the wire this week. Why don't you kick things off for us?
Yep. So I've got like 2 real ones. The one's like, I wouldn't say a goof, but it's more of a dart throw. The first one, kind of going off, you mentioned, has to do with injury here. I've got Ty Chandler as the top running back for this waiver wire week. With Madison going down, he saw a season high 15 touches, only amounted to 7.2 fantasy points. But you've got to assume he's going to step into that lead role, assuming Madison misses time. Really, the only other threat to touches that exists at this point in time would be Myles Gaskin, who is currently on the practice squad. You got CJ Ham as well at fullback. I'm not really banking on him to be challenging for touches. As we know, Cam Akers got hurt as well earlier in the season. So, whether or not it amounts to anything or not, Ty Chandler is going to get a valuable role. Since he isn't the strongest against running backs, they're right around the middle of the pack. They give up the 17th most amount of points to the running back position. So by no means is he, gearing up for a tough matchup. Like kind of just looking at his next couple of weeks too, he's got Detroit, who we've seen give up points to running backs. Green Bay is right around mid-pack too, probably a little bit above average. This offense is a bit of a mess, but again, anytime you can guarantee probably 10 plus touches from a running back, in my opinion, I'll take that upside, especially if you just lost to Josh Jacobs or someone else. I think you could do a lot worse. So Ty Chandler's my number 1. My number 2 is someone who I think a lot of guys dropped as we had no idea what was going on with his backfield, and that's D'Onta Foreman. I think we have finally established this is the running back 1 for the rest of the season for the Chicago Bears. We saw it again. He is clearly the running back 1. Saw about 55% of the snaps on offense. Just in terms of like what did the rest of the distribution look like? Roschon Johnson saw 28% of snaps, really just in there a lot of times for like third down and obvious passing downs. Khalil Herbert all the way down to 17%. And Blazingham, their fullback, really saw 20% of the snaps. So it feels like this is D'Onta Foreman's backfield to lose. He had 13 touches, which again he didn't score, but still pretty efficient. Like you look at that, he had 4.5 yards a carry, about 11 yards a catch. So the best running back in that backfield. And the last one I want to highlight is rookie Chase Brown out of Cincinnati. If you guys watched our recap episode, I know Shaun alluded to it a bit. There's something fun brewing in that backfield. He's got juice that I don't think, Joe Mixon has at this point in his career. And he earned a 33% snap share this week, which was by far a career high for him. 8 touches on the ground, 3 more through the air, had that huge screen pass where he pretty much wasn't touched until like 60 yards downfield. The Bengals are still in the playoff hunt. They're going to be playing serious football. They're going to be trying to score points. Joe Mixon, we know, is pretty close to falling off a cliff in terms of like age wise. So, having a younger set of legs to kind of rotate in and out to give Mixon a breather is a fun one. So this one, like, I don't know. You'd have to be pretty desperate to play him. If I'm a Joe Mixon owner and I made it to the playoffs, I'm absolutely rostering Chase Brown. God forbid anything happens to Mixon. I think Chase Brown has clearly showed he's the number 2. We thought maybe it was going to be Travion. Didn't really turn out that way. Chase Brown is the second best running back in that backfield.
I guess my question for you, Aidan, you're on the wire. All 3 guys are out there. Who are you prioritizing first out of these 3 guys?
That's hard. I like Foreman personally because of the offense, but they do have Cleveland this week, which is the matchup's tough. The matchup's tough, but I think if you're going to bank on any one of these guys to score, Foreman by far has the best chance. That offense is right around 10th in terms of points per game when Justin Fields plays. And we saw what the Vikings offense just looked like, but Ty Chandler's going to get the volume. So I think Foreman and Chandler probably volume-wise will be pretty similar in terms of touches. I think Chandler will probably even out-touch him a little bit, but I don't trust this Minnesota Vikings offense. Not one bit. That was a pretty horrific outing. And then Chase Brown is a dart throw. Like, he's not going to get many touches. He's going to have to score on a big play like that, or, up his catch passing volume to where it makes him as a viable weekly play. But so probably Foreman and then Chandler and Brown kind of tied for second there.
Breaking news. This is not related to waivers, but it will relate to waivers a little bit. But I just saw that Justin Herbert is going to undergo surgery on his finger.
I knew it. So he's done it. He's done.
And it's likely that he might miss the season. It's not official yet, but it is a possibility. The surgery will depend on if he returns this season. But yeah, wow. That is not good for Chargers bag holders.
Well, it's great for Quentin Johnson, I guess, because he can't catch a ball if it's thrown by Herbert. But when Easton Stick's throwing him the rock, he's all of a sudden catching downfield targets.
I guess my good. Mike Williams best ball bags are officially dead.
They were dead a long time ago.
Maybe this was the nail. This was the nail in the coffin. Okay, that's great to know. Chandler does have a doozy matchup against Cincy, even though Cincy did kind of shut down Zach Moss this week. I think overall Foreman is in a better offense and has had a better season and is a better running back. So if you want to chase volume, Chandler's probably the play. I think Foreman, though, I think Foreman's someone I'd feel a lot more comfortable starting. I don't know if the upside is there as much. And then I love Chase Brown. I also like Rico Dowdle too, the backup in.
He keeps getting touches, man.
Yeah, he keeps getting touches.
He belongs though. Like, he belongs.
Yeah. He's clearly the backup, but 28% of the snaps, it was the highest amount of snap share he's seen in basically the past month. He scored 12 points. No idea why he got that goal line carry. Like, come on. Like, why are you subbing out Tony? Like, let your guy get in the zone, cool. McCarthy. Cool. But overall, I think Dowdle's a good stash play. And then Elijah Mitchell's hurt again. So if you ever CMC, go pick up JP Mason. Jordan Mason is the direct backup right now. All right, Keegan, who do you got for us this week?
Shaun has so graciously told me that I'm only allowed 3 wide receivers. I would be a miss if I didn't give you more than 3. So I'll start with the highest owned guys. That should be pretty self-explanatory. Make sure Romeo Doubs is not on the waiver wire. 72 yards in Sunday Night Football last week. Led the Packers in receiving yards. We've mentioned him before. He's really good red zone threat. He's at 64% ownership on Sleeper, so it's not likely that he's available, but make sure he is. If he is, make sure he's on your roster. The next highest owned guy was Noah Brown. We talked about him a lot in the matchups heading to this week. I know we've talked about him in previous waiver wire episodes, but this is a really banged up receiving core right now with Tank Dell. Nico Collins is hurt. And you could even mention John Mechie here as well, too. Now, this is not going to be like some home run waiver wire play, But if CJ Stroud doesn't miss any time, like he's going to have to throw to somebody. So I like Noah Brown. But Noah Brown and Romeo Doubs, make sure they're available in your league and grab them if not.
Did he get hurt? Or was
Noah
he was hurt already, right? He was hurt already. Okay. So
correct.
Yeah,
And then he came back into the lineup. You
see
could throw John
back-to-back
Mechie in there as well
gooses.
too.
I just
But
see back-to-back goose eggs, and I was like, did he get hurt again?
He was active in both of those, but I don't think he's
that's
been
brutal.
re-injured since his weeks 11 and 12 absence.
Okay, good to know. I think I like Brown.
Yeah.
The next one is personally one of my favorite waiver wire wide receivers on the year. I think I picked him up and dropped him no less than 10 different times across all my leagues, but it's Zay Jones. Zay Jones, 43% on Sleeper right now. Next opponents are Baltimore, Tampa Bay, and Carolina. Volume for Zay Jones. 27.8% target share this past week. He had 14 targets, right? It looks
Insane.
good for Zay Jones when he's on the field. He's getting targeted a ton. This is a very good volume-friendly waiver wire pickup. Christian Kirk, his balls exploded, so he will not be available for the remainder of the season. Calvin Ridley is still playing in this very not fantasy-friendly role that seems to be home run hitting. Evan Ingram's been eating a lot, but I definitely like the fact that Trevor Lawrence missed no time. So as long as Trevor Lawrence is healthy and playing, like Zay Jones is a great pickup as you head into the fantasy football playoffs. They've got the Week 16 matchup, which is what I'm looking at the most. Baltimore's bad in Week 15, but Week 16 versus the Buccaneers, since Week 8, Tampa Bay's allowed the 10th most PPR points per target and the third most receiving yards per game to perimeter wide receivers per fantasy points data. So good matchup if you can get to Week 17 with Zay Jones in your lineup.
I mean, Zay Jones Week 16 is fire. Tampa Bay has gotten absolutely torn up. That's looking like a Calvin Ridley blow up spot. And then Baltimore too for Zay Jones, not that bad. Baltimore's been good against wide receivers, but it's not like the Jets where it's like I'm not, unless you're Tyreek Hill, I'm not starting a receiver against the Jets. Like it's not like completely Jover.
Yep.
I didn't realize he had 14 targets.
Yeah, and then 8
I watched the game and it felt like he was involved, but that's a great sign of things. Trevor should have sat to start with. I wish Trevor just sat. But yeah, Baltimore and Tampa will be quite a bit more friendly to Zay Jones. So really good to see him very involved.
And the next pretty high owned guy, he's kind of fringe. Check if he's available, check if he's not, but it's Odell. You got to have Odell on your roster as you run into playoffs here. I mean, obviously he just had his best game with 23.2% target share, 97 receiving yards, had an awesome touchdown, which looked like he ran the wrong route, but adjusted kind of mid route to make a catch. He did that twice in the game, kind of looked like Odell of old with his ability to kind of track a ball out of nowhere. 54% of the offensive snaps, which is the highest snap count since week 8. He's getting healthy, looking good. This is a good player who can make big time plays in important games. And they're going down the stretch against Jacksonville next, SF, both away games, then Miami to end the season. Not a perfect playoff schedule, but to be the wide receiver 2 in a Ravens offense that is definitely capable of having some massive boom passing games like we just saw against the Rams. I like having OBJ on my roster for sure. He's definitely like a flex wide receiver 3 play, but nonetheless, since week 8, Jaguars have allowed the most PPR points per target and the 10th most receiving yards per game to perimeter wide receivers. So that is a pretty good matchup for him. And then lastly, this is another player that I think I flirted with and a lot of people have flirted with on the waiver wire, but I think Rashid Shaheed is worth consideration again. Derek Carr has been bad, no doubt, but I think after that Week 11 bye, New Orleans was ready to give Shaheed more offensive snaps. He played 9 of 11 offensive snaps in the first 2 drives of Week 12, and then he's been dealing with an injury since then, but he should be good to go and off injury designation going into Week 15. Before he was injured, that Week 12 game, he was targeted 5 times on 13 routes, which was pretty good. So if he's available and healthy, not a bad stash play as well too. But that kind of rounds out the wide receivers. So check if they're dropped or if they're available. Noah Brown, Romeo Doubs, Odell, and then 2 players to add that I think can help give some depth to your roster would be Zay Jones and Romeo Doubs. Some honorable mentions I had before Justin Herbert news came out was Josh Palmer, make sure he's available, and then I guess Quentin Johnson. Now that Easton Stick is going to be the quarterback because he can catch footballs from him. So
I really don't understand how Quentin Johnston 3 for 91 with I saw they threw a screen to Quentin. I was like, oh, it only took him 13 weeks to realize that he's a good screen guy. Some people too that I think are worth a mention. I love Keegan says I'm going to start with 3 and then goes with 6.
yep,
Amazing
That was
stuff.
awesome. Once he
Amazing
got to
stuff
4,
here.
Shaun's face dropped. I was like, let's go.
I was just like, wow, he did it. And Aidan saw it and started laughing. Respectfully, of course. I think too, something worth calling out. I like Demario Douglas if he's available. Bailey Zappi looked pretty sharp. He's missed the past 2 weeks with a concussion. Had really good production before he went out. He's a PPR merchant. If he's available in 32% of leagues, he's a very interesting start against Kansas City and Pittsburgh. I mean, a very interesting start against Kansas City in week 15. I've started him in PPR leagues, and he's put up like 14, 10, 11. He's been pretty solid. I think Elijah Moore is definitely still on the menu as well. So if Elijah Moore is available, definitely think you should pick him up. I don't know. There's a lot of options. I think Zay and OBJ are the best, in my opinion, though.
Yeah, I think Zay would be my pick personally. I ended up grabbing him, but because of the Christian Kirk injury, so I kind of got ahead of that one, which was cool. OBJ too, yeah. Noah
I'd
Brown,
say
I'm a
Zay
little
and
concerned
OBJ.
about. If CJ misses any time, that'd be such a bummer. Like that offense is just making me sad. But someone has
Robert
to catch
Woods
passes.
too. Robert Woods, did
Oh.
he do anything? Oh God,
Bobby
Yeah.
Trees.
I don't know, man.
No,
Noah Brown,
don't
we
have to
saw
do
him
that.
do it. 0 points in back-to-back weeks is brutal, but Tennessee week 15 matchup. I'd say if I had to order
and week
Zay
17
Jones,
Tennessee matchup.
yeah, good call. I'd say Zay Jones, OBJ, Noah Brown if I had to rank them. I really like Pop Douglas too.
Half of me wanted to toss Jonathan Mingo in this list, and then the other half of me realized what a dumb idea that was.
He was so close to hitting a big touchdown if Bryce Young wasn't terrible.
I almost put down 10 wide receivers. I could have kept going.
No.
There are options. There are definitely options.
Wide receiver is always way deeper. I was looking at the running backs, like this is a fucking disaster.
Oh, we also
Dude, no
forgot
Jerick
Zamir
McKinnon
White.
shout outs.
Yeah, we forgot CEH, Jarrett McKinnon, and Zamir White for running backs.
I kind of just figured Pacheco's coming back next week.
Okay. So
Or else I would have. I was looking
Okay.
at Clyde. Like Clyde had a good game, but I was like, I don't know.
yeah,
I just figure it's a 1 week thing.
yeah. So if McKinnon, if Pacheco continues to miss time, he might miss next week. CEH definitely a priority if he's out there, and then Zamir White too. If Josh Jacobs misses any time, I would go pick up Zamir just in case. Moving on to quarterback, we'll start off with the QB2 over the past 2 weeks, and that is Jake Browning. So Jake Browning, he plays in a loaded offense. Zach Taylor is dialed. He's the QB2 over the past 2 weeks, but he has a matchup versus Minnesota, whose defense is playing lights out. Then he has a matchup against the Pittsburgh defense that gave him a ton of trouble. Not awful matchups per se, but definitely not Jacksonville or Indianapolis bad. So if you have him on your team, I don't know, you kind of keep riding the hot hand here, but it might be like his 28-point games, 26-point games might be over.
There's no way you're typing his name in right now.
Next guy that I'm moving on here.
No,
Next
you
guy
are
that I'm moving on here
sick.
is Nick Mullens. The guys are laughing at me a little bit, right? Nick Mullens is definitely somebody. If you are starting him in week 15 of the fantasy playoffs, you are fucking nuts, or you're in a super flex league. He's had some successful stretches in his career, and he also faces off against a Cincinnati defense that's given up the 9th most points to QBs this year in week 15. And then he plays a Detroit defense that's given up the 4th most points to quarterbacks this year in week 16. So this late in the year, you got to play the matchups. Nick Mullens has 2 juicy matchups. If we see Jefferson, Addison, Powell, and Hawkinson all healthy, That's a great offensive infrastructure. You could do way worse with Nick Mullens. And then last but not least is the QB2 on the week. You got to call him out, and that is Desmond Ridder. I have Desmond Ridder as somebody worth taking a look at and streaming over the next couple of weeks. He scored 25 points against Tampa Bay in week 14, and that's with multiple turnovers. Week 15, he faces off against Carolina. Week 16, he gets Indy. These are two pretty solid matchups. I think the Falcons' offense in a whole is trending up for the fantasy playoffs. And if you're in a super flex league, Desmond Ridder is a pretty ideal QB2 because of what he brings as a runner in the red zone. He has multiple rushing touchdowns this season. So I'm a fan of Desmond Ridder as a streamer over the next 2 weeks. Again, Carolina and Indy have been pretty juicy matchups. But again, if you don't have Jordan Love or Sam Howell or now Jake Browning, it's pretty slim pickings to stream out there, in my opinion. But I'd rather play Desmond Ridder than Gardner Minshew over the next 2 weeks. Just laying that out there.
Yeah, and while we're talking QBs, I just want to go over using Fantasy Pros like remaining strength of schedule, like just for ease of matchup. To defend Shaun's point, the Minnesota Vikings have the third easiest remaining schedule for quarterbacks. So if it's Doubs or if it's Mullens, I'm not sure, but best remaining schedule is Dak Prescott.
I'm not doing it.
The second best remaining schedule for quarterbacks is Zach Wilson. I'm not going to tell anybody to pick up Zach Wilson. But some other guys on the waiver who have favorable schedules remaining in the year are Desmond Ridder, Tommy DeVito, Easton Stick, Joe Flacco is another one. Bryce Young, Aidan O'Connell, and Brock Purdy kind of round out like the top 14 remaining best easy schedules. Baker Mayfield's kind of fringe there.
I don't hate Zach. Week 16,
Zach had a good game.
Zach. Week 16, Zach against Washington. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. If I'm gonna recommend Nick Mullens, I think I'm okay with recommending a little Zachy Poo.
I'm going Zach over Nick Mullens. I think you just have a soft spot from his Niner days.
No, I don't like him. I really don't. But he's got two good matchups and he's put up points before and his weapons are good. Like, look, if Jake Browning can go out there and score, close to 50 fantasy points in back like 2 weeks, Nick Mullens can fucking do it. His offense is loaded. And he's got two good matchups. So
I can't
it's not
get on board there.
It's definitely not great. And then moving on to tight ends here, there's a lot of options on the poo-poo platter that is tight ends. Definitely can't deny that. I'd say the guy that I'd be most excited to stream this week is Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas is coming off a bye. He just got dropped. If he got dropped coming off the bye, he's a really attractive guy to pick up. Week 15, Logan Thomas is going up against a Rams defense that has gotten torched by tight ends. In week 16, he's going up against a Jets defense who basically only gives up points to tight ends and running backs. So he has two favorable matchups. He's been the tight end 15 on the season. He's been pretty consistent. He's pretty bankable production. Back-to-back kind of bad weeks against Dallas and Miami, but two favorable matchups here in a Commander's offense that spreads the ball around. Just way too much. But Logan Thomas is going to be involved. And then another guy that I think is worth picking up is someone that we've highlighted a couple times over the past few weeks, and that's Tucker Kraft. So Tucker Kraft is the rookie tight end who has got more support than most people on Twitter. Like, you would think he's the next coming of Jesus Christ with the way people talk about Tucker Kraft. But we're recording this before the Monday night games. Kraft has played in 95% of snaps in back-to-back weeks, and he's coming off a 6-target performance against Kansas City. If you watch this and Kraft puts up a stinker against the Giants, it is what it is. But if Kraft has another solid week against the Giants where he sees 4 or 5 targets, maybe catches a touchdown, I'd feel really confident about Tucker Kraft rest of the season. And then if Christian Watson continues to miss time, you're going to see targets consolidate a bit more. And Tucker Kraft, and the fact that he plays a ton of snaps, it's all a good sign. The last guy that I have here, another guy that hasn't played yet because we're recording this Monday afternoon, but that's Chig Okonkwo.
No.
Chig Okonkwo is he's seen 5+ targets. Yeah, talk about best ball. Chig Okonkwo has seen 5+ targets in back-to-back weeks. In week 16, he faces off against Houston, who has been bottom 5 against tight ends. Week 16 goes up against Seattle, who's middle of the pack against tight ends. Week 17 faces off against Houston again, who's bottom 5 against tight ends. So
I'm down to get Chiggy with it.
I'm down to get jiggy with it too. Last but not least, maybe these guys got dropped. Maybe they didn't. But if Darren Waller got released, Darren Waller hopes to return next week against New Orleans. Tommy DeVito's played pretty well. Tyrod Taylor is available if Tommy DeVito doesn't play well. I don't know. I'd be a little nervous. You don't have to play him at MetLife till week 17, which is fantastic. And he has a juicy week 17 matchup against the Rams defense that's bad against tight ends. So if Waller's set on playing week 15, definitely worth scooping him up there if someone dropped him. And then last but not least, we're going to end the show with Greg Dulcich.
No.
Reports indicate that he could return. Well, Keegan, you kind of look like Greg Dulcich right now. You kind of
A little bit.
You kind of got some Dulcich vibes. Good for you, dude.
Are we really doing this with the Dulcich vibes?
Look,
his hair's a little bit curlier than mine.
Look.
But
Yeah.
look.
I thought we were all just going to collectively not talk about Dulcich again and just like pick back up the steam once we get
Like
to
it was
the
one of
new
those
season.
things that just like never happened. I don't know what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
He's
I don't
on
have 20%
he's on
exposure.
he's on pace. He's on pace to return before the end of the season. So, Greg Dulcich, if he's available, Russell Wilson's playing well. Russell Wilson peppered him with targets. He was supposed to have a big role in this offense before he pulled his hamstring 15 times. If Greg Dulcich is available, worth a dart throw. If I were to prioritize these for week 15, I'm going Logan Thomas. I would see how things shake out between Tucker Kraft and Chig Okonkwo. And then if Darren Waller's out there, I'd get a little aggressive if you have Fab. If he's set on playing, he's going to soak up targets. If that's it for tight ends, any other tight ends, any other guys that we missed that we want to highlight?
Whew, if you're a big dummy like me and you dropped Njoku last week because Mr. Dallas Goedert was coming back, make sure David Njoku is available.
You dropped the number 7 tight end.
Bro,
Oh man,
Dallas Goedert was coming back. You only have 5 bench spots. I had to make a decision, and
Yeah.
I made the wrong decision.
I benched Njoku for Goddard, but I kept both on my team, so at least I didn't go all the way. I put one foot in the water.
You're better than man. You're a better man than me. I'll tell you what.
God, Njoku went crazy.
He went insane, dude.
He looks so good. He looks so
Every
Just
catch, I felt like I was
big-ass
getting
human being.
stabbed.
Yeah.
number 7 tight end. He's averaging how many PPR points per game this year? Let me see. He is averaging. Oh, come on. He has 141 PPR points, so divide that by 13. What is he like, over 10 a game?
Yeah.
Over 10
it's-
again.
It's like a lot.
Quick maths.
Wow. Well, that's it for the waiver show. If you're still rocking with us 30 minutes into a week 15 waiver wire episode, thank you. We appreciate you.
We do appreciate you.
Seriously.
Big time.
Guys, anything to say before we get out of here?
Nothing. I hope everybody wins their first round of playoffs. If you have a first round bye, enjoy it. If you miss playoffs, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, good thing for you is we'll do it all again next year. Also, just want to highlight that I know the fantasy season is ending, but we're going to cover everything through fantasy playoffs, obviously the regular season, and we'll still do some football content during playoff season. And then we're in draft season. So for anybody who's new to Regression to the Mean channel that joined this year and missed the off season, like maybe you joined the best ball drafts or maybe you joined our mock drafts and now you're watching, the RTM team will also be doing rookie coverage and NFL draft coverage. We'll try and help you with your dynasty drafts.
Oh, yeah.
We'll go through prospects. We'll go through the top quarterbacks. You'll hear a lot of Maserati, Marv talk. You'll hear some Drake May talk, some Caleb Williams talk. So if you've joined us for the regular season, thank you.
Some league neighbors talk, baby. Woo,
some
Darren.
Keon Coleman talk. But yeah, just want to give a heads up to anybody as we approach the off season that we're not done once the fantasy season ends.
I'm off Keon Coleman Island. I learned from Quentin Johnston.
We'll save it for the episodes later.
All right, boys. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time.